Hey guys, Brad Pryor here with another Grit branded podcast. I'm hanging out with my GM today, Colt Herrin, and we're doing this podcast because we want to really hone in on why you use Rafter P construction. Because Colt and his sales team pretty much has fielded most of the calls these days. I get some clients that are return clients or farm ranch clients, so they deal with the bulk of everything. And I think a lot of what gets thrown to the side or not understood about Rafter P is our processes and how we do things. So, Colt, it's right before spring. Easter just happened. So, what exactly does that look like in a build environment right now with Rafter P? Like if somebody's coming for a spring build, everybody wants to be in before Thanksgiving or Christmas. If it's a house, obviously, but we have commercial, farm and ranch, residential. Our processes are the same with all of those three different items or three different sectors of the building business that we work in. So what are you seeing, or what things that we need to explain that really would help people understand after this bid? You get this bid, this is what you get with Rafter P, not just a number.
Right. Well, I mean, like right now we've got, I think spring builds are starting to pick up. We got a pretty good, schedule going of new projects about to start and already in the middle of stuff, and definitely feel the temperature of the market kind of heating up, and it always does when the sun's shining and grass is turning green. So that's a really good thing for the market, and not just for us, but all of our subcontractors and people that we work with and friends and stuff. I'm sure you've seen this kind of the same thing with your inner circle. So, but I mean, biggest thing is the why we use Rafter P. That's one of the from most of my clients that we go meet on the property, or we do a site visit, go show them the house that we built or whatever. They're most interested in why. Why should I use Rafter P construction? Why is this person's price X and your price is X? What's the difference from what you're getting? And I think that'd be good. We talked about it kind of before, but it'd be good to kind of let our audience know, before they even meet us and shake our hand, like these are the two leaders in this company that are talking about what our process is and why you should use Rafter P. Not a sales pitch or anything like that, but I think it helps the intelligent customer decide, all right, I'm gonna get off the fence and I know I need to use them, or maybe this isn't the company for me. Maybe I want to be a lot more hands-on. Maybe I want to be my own general contractor. So either way, it could benefit an audience to be able to say, I know their process and I would love to use them, or there's going to be so involved that I might want to do this, kind of contract this on my own. So as we go into talking more, we do a lot of things different than other contractors. So it is kind of, we try to take all the burden of the stresses of building away, and let you enjoy the project throughout the whole thing, rather than, having to be stressed out if we're going to show up, or what's going to happen, or, is the money right, is, what's happening tomorrow. We try to take all that stuff away from the worries of anybody,
Or even what we're getting, or what the customer's going to get. That's the biggest thing. And I think what really hurts our front end is that if you're just going to look at the number and not want any kind of definition behind it, we're going to lose the work. Because we, unlike most contractors, we're design build contractors, so we have to provide a budget, we have to perform under that budget, and through the design process, we have to explain if something's out of budget. And we try to stay mid-range of everything. We don't go low and high and try to be a used car salesman as we go through the design process. We listen to what your wants are up front. We budget towards that. And a lot of times people just look at the number and don't understand the why. So this video is basically, and podcast is for, this is the things you need to think about when you're getting a number from us. Because we're not a square foot contractor. We don't do it. It's $150 a square foot. Well, that's fine and dandy, and you got $7 for plumbing, $8 for electrical, and you don't have a clue. Our drawings, everything we do, our design team, our sales team, go through every step from commercial, residential, farm and ranch, all the same way. And what we want to do is deliver that project to you just like we designed it, just like we budgeted it, and then go under hard bids on it.
Yep.
And I think that's the big thing, is that people, most guys that are in business that compete against us, I feel like you're a one-man band or a husband and a wife, on a build team, and they have a crew that works behind them, so they don't have time to be as efficient and elaborate with their processes like we have, or don't even have a process. They're just going off This is what they do, and they try to get the build under that number the whole way. And the next thing you know, you're at the bank. You thought you had enough money in there for electrical. You go pick out your appliances as you're going through the build, or your appliances, but your lighting fixtures, your plumbing fixtures. You're picking all this stuff out as you go. And next thing you know, you're not getting anything that you want. Mm-hmm. You know, I was talking to a contractor the other day, Trey Norris, a good friend of ours, and it's like the biggest thing is a let down to a customer, and he's right. It's not they can't afford a job. It's when they get a job that's not what they wanted. Yep. When you're done. Well, you're ultimately letting that person down in so many ways that nobody can afford to fix it at that point. Mm-hmm. And we stay ahead of that so we don't have that upset at the end. Right. Because that's the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is with other builders too, you know, not knocking anybody, but it's just the way of the world. You know, if you got a cost plus job and, you know, I look at a set of plans and I know the air conditioning or the HVAC number should be like $26,000. But then they've allotted, you know, $11,000 to that line item. Well, yeah, they're already beating us by $15,000 or whatever that may be right off the jump, but they can't heat and cool that house for $11,000 correctly, you know. Mm-hmm. So when it comes time to, hey, pick this out, or hey, whatever that may be, you're getting the bottom of the barrel when it comes to quality of product, just to be able to be in budget. Or at that time, they're going to say, hey, we only had $11,000 in here, sorry. But it really needs to be 25, you know, so you're going to have to come up with another $14,000. And the deal is, if you're at a bank, that's pretty difficult to do, you know, and, you know, that's going to be coming money out of your pocket. And like you said earlier, going from our process, like starting at the very beginning, you know, coming out, having a preliminary meeting, our sales team and design staff goes through a preliminary meeting inside our office, sits down with you, goes through the list of questions and everything that pertain to your project, whether that be, you know, residential, commercial, or farm ranch, whatever that may be. And then we take a very, very educated estimate to each one of those items, because we have a database of, you know, thousands of projects that we put numbers on, and we consistently update those numbers to where it's real time. So whenever we're giving a number, it's not just, you know, throwing stuff in on a scratch pad. We have a detailed breakdown of here's what the building's going to cost, here's what the dirt work's going to cost, here's what your, you know, say it's a commercial job, here's what your fire suppression system's going to cost, here's what geotech is going to cost, here's what your structural foundation drawings and all that kind of. So just saying all that to say this, like, we take it up front to get the most accurate possible number before you hand us a dime, you know, and we don't ever expect it. It happened to me a couple weeks ago. Yeah, I said, hey, y'all are our people, you know, I want to write you a check, get this thing going. I said, no, I don't want any money until we solidify what we're going to give you is exactly what you want and exactly what you want to pay for it, you know. So I think that's kind of different than us, because a lot of people just jump at the chance. You want to write me a check? Here's the information, you know. But and I know that you stand for the same values. I know that my whole staff, you know, sales team stands for the same values. Like, we're going to do what's right and what's best at all times, and, you know, anytime we've ever had a problem with a job or anytime we've ever, you know, had any kind of a mix-up with a customer, it's because we didn't follow the process that's there. You know, that's the only time I can remember of jobs not going perfectly correct the whole way, is whenever we've strayed from that process that worked so well and try to do it in a different way, and it bites us in the ass every time, you know.
And I think we do. I think the other part of when things don't go successful for us is when we don't own the whole job. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I say that is because they really don't know how to budget stuff. So they're the guy that's plugging in a number may have the dirt work 2 foot off, and that's a big number to plug in. Right. When you're talking about a dirt work process, you know, and that's the most important. You can't cheat that or fix that. You have to make that level.
It has to drain.
It has to drain. You know, and I think that's something that people really need to understand. We have to own the job, and we don't just build your shells. We do the whole thing or nothing. And I think another very important thing that's cool about Rafter P is that our partner, Kurt, you, Ashley, Nikki, Sean, me, like, we all have our own individual space of what we specialize in each of commercial, residential, farm, and ranch. Mm-hmm. So you're not just getting, like Kurt, for example, he builds Panera Breads, he does all these things. Mm-hmm. For restaurant industry, and we bid off of plans, but he has so much capability of over 30 years worth of experience. He knows what you need if we're building something out De Leon, Texas. You know, we just finished Stockman's up out there, and that was a 17,000 square foot retail space. Even though it's not in the city of Dallas or Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, we know what needs it in that commercial build: handicap accessibility, lighting, fire sprinkler, all the things, and we still build that way and design build that. So you're not just stuck out in, you know, rural areas with a residential contractor. When you hire Rafter P, you have a farm and ranch person. They can build your farm and ranch. They can build your house. They can build your what you make money off of every day.
Yep.
Your commercial side. So having these personalities in a company that specialize and know each individual thing that make this process work, you're hiring a team that can do whatever you want.
Right.
There's not much that we turn down, other than if we can't own the whole process.
Right.
It's not us.
And it takes a learning curve too. You know, there's certain projects that we've done in the past year or so, like you said, that kind of had a little heartache to them. But it's nothing against us, nothing against the customer. It's just that whenever, you know, I know your personality very well, and you know mine. Like when we get into something, I want total control, because any outside influence or anything that might happen, somebody might have an idea over here. That's fine, but it all needs to come through us, because when we give this information to our guys, and then it all falls apart, it's because they're used to knowing that I'm going to tell them exactly what needs to happen and when it needs to happen. When they're looking different ways, that's when they get confused. They make scheduling errors. They make, you know, give misinformation to a customer possibly, because they don't know who's pitching, you know, who's the quarterback. And we perform best when we're the quarterback, you know. There's certain situations, like we're building a house for a customer right now in East Texas, and he owns a company that does drywall and paint. So, you know, it only makes sense for him to do the drywall and paint. That doesn't affect the grand scheme of things, you know. So we will budge on certain situations like that, but it has to make sense through the whole build. You know, if we're gonna build something that has a certain wall type and wall thickness, and then you're gonna possibly have someone else come in after us and make those and put something else on that wall that we don't know about. We don't know, you know, for plumbing distances and measurements. We don't know what substrate you're going to use, whether it needs to be vertical or horizontal framing members to put on there. So then it comes into a situation where, like, why did you do that? Why, if you would have just ran on vertical, we could have done it this. I get it, but we had no idea. You know, if we would have handled it and went through our process, of course it would have been vertical, not horizontal. You know, so just little things like that. And it's really learning curves. It's growing pains, and we're not sitting here crying about it, but we do know, you know, with more certainty now than ever, that when we are quarterbacking a project, it goes flawlessly 99% of the time. Right. So,
well, and everything in that company, that next person knows what to do after this person did it. So you have that hand-to-hand communication with your team, and when you plug them out of it, and it's just me and you running a job, and we're missing the rest of our team, it all gets messed up because they're used to following us, of our lead or our sales team, and then after that, if they're getting involved halfway through a job that somebody else has already done X, Y, Z, they're already lost because how did they do that? Because we have on Builder Trend, the software we use, we have a checklist in there, and the checklist was made by me. What I want to see, how many photos for this stage, and that's what they're trained to do. You know, and you take that away from them, you know, they're lost. So we can't perform on the level that we normally do.
Yeah.
So, and before we get too far, and I like on the pre-con side, or when we're budgeting things, you talked about the air conditioning. And air conditioning in any house we build, it's not just a metal house, but any house we build these days, we build everything to a high efficiency energy code, no matter where it's at. AC is a critical number, is probably one of the most difficult numbers for us to budget for, because things change sometimes in that. How you know, being an open or encapsulated building, you run into all kinds of variables. When you have tall ceilings, you have
attics, extra large attics, you know.
You get into ERVs, you get into dehumidifiers, and there may be multiple of those. You get into, you know, the air conditioning system. It's a 2-cycle system, variable speeds, and it's like you get all this stuff. Well, if you just gave somebody a blank floor plan, no elevations, no wall schedules, no insulation schedules, and they gave you a bid, you need to be scared. Because if they don't know if you're 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot vaulted ceilings, how tall the roof line is at the ridge to the eave, there's
How's
a
it insulated?
yeah, how it's insulated. What are the windows insulated like? Like if they don't have all these variables, that's what an AC guy does the road to figure out his load calcs for that house. So if you don't have that on your floor plan that you're passing around to everybody, you're probably going to be way behind, or you're going to live in a mold factory. You know, when it's all said and done. And that's the last thing that anybody, even though we didn't get the job, the last thing we want is anybody to have a problem like that.
Absolutely. And just like, I mean, if you set a set of plans on this table and said, I need an air conditioner quote, and I need it to be 70 degrees, I want to make it cold. Anybody that has an air conditioning business or is driving one can make your house warm or cold. That's not the issue. The issue is the humidity that these encapsulated structures can create if it's not done well, if the air exchange is not correct. But that's just one small piece of the science that we've spent years and years to perfect, to be able to make sure that you're getting the most efficient and the long-standing home that you want, you know, and that you paid for. You know, again, we're not going to win every job. It's just not possible, and I understand that, and I no disrespect to anybody if the budget doesn't allow, but those are the things that when somebody says why, I know that, you know, a lot of our customers that I've had walks with, talked to some of our past clients that I've walked into a house, and one particular customer a couple weeks ago said why, and they said, well, this is the most efficient house I've ever been in my life. You know, electric bills all time low, and you know, it's middle of spring, constantly changing. I mean, you can just walk in the house and know that it's balanced. Right. And that's a big one. Another one being, you know, as a compliment that I heard about you specifically is just, it's for a client that we worked for 12, 15 years in Greenville, Texas. And she said, I'm never going to use anybody but Brad and Rafter P because I know what I'm getting. You know, they're not going to, you know, be the discounted rate contractor, but I know what I'm getting. I travel a lot. She was telling a potential client this, and I travel a lot. I went to Alaska for 6 months this past year while they're building my house, and I didn't worry at all, you know, and I think that's a key factor, you know, to trust a contractor and trust an owner of a construction company that they're willing to leave the country, basically, going through customs, going through Canada, you know, and knowing that their house is under construction that you're spending, you know, upwards of $1 million or over on, and leaving it in our hands, trusting that they're good. You know, simple pictures. Hey, how's it going? Colt, Gary, Brad, how's it going out there? And they're fine. You know, I think that speaks volumes to your reputation and what you've given, you know, trickle down effect that's given to me and some of my guys too, is we're going to do it right. You know, if we got to rip it out, we'll rip it out, but it's going to be done right. Right. And,
well, I think too, when you first came to work here, both of us being hard-headed, you know, you saw so much meat on the bone. You're like, there's another way we can do this to make more money. There's another way. Like just being a young pup, you know, and I mean, that's what, 12 foot, 15, I don't know, forever ago. But it's like, no, this works. When it rains, I can't, I was telling somebody, I don't even remember the last time we had a warranty claim. Like, I know we probably have one, but very rarely. Yeah. We're sitting in our facility in Decatur right now. It took a F1 tornado within 50 feet of where I'm sitting. We had one window blown out. The house next to us was locked off the slab.
Yeah, it was from flying debris. It wasn't even because the window just broke.
So that's why we don't cut a corner. Because I build everything, and I will not accept nothing less unless I would put my own family. And in a horse facility, you know, from that to a commercial building to a house. Like, if you don't look at everything and put the high quality standards on it, it's not going to have our name on it. Yep. You know, and that's a big difference. I think also another thing, before we step away from looking at a floor plan, a big thing that we lose work on, and it's not because of our fault, it's because if the contractor has not been on site and he's giving you a dirt work budget number and what utilities cost, he's never even been there, I would probably not use that guy. Because when I'll go out on site, after we give the actual original numbers, and I go out there and look on site, and I figure out what the infrastructure is going to cost, the roads, the water, the power, the wells, the septic tank, if it's got rock underneath it, you know, what are the elevations of the pad and the building and the horse barn and all the things where that thing is sitting. If you have a guy that says you can go to the bank with this bid off that floor plan, and you've never seen your site, you're in trouble. Because that is one more step before we even take any money for plans. The last part of our budget is me going out there and looking at site, or you, or Kurt. And it's like, but people miss that so much because they trust that they got enough dirt work in there. Mm-hmm. And that's everything the rest of your whole investment is sitting on the hope of a dream that they got enough money in there to do it right.
Right.
And 90% of the time, if anybody does that, they're wrong.
Yep. And to your point too, I think we lose on the commercial side of things. We lose the most opportunities at work for that exact reason. Especially being like, if you're going to call Rafter P and ask for, any kind of commercial type project, first question out of probably any of our mouths is going to be, well, do you have your geotech reports done? And if people are giving you numbers to build a restaurant or whatever in the city of Rockwall, the city of Dallas, the city of Decatur, if you're getting bids from that you're standing behind without even a geotechnical report, which is the soil condition, I know I'm just saying that for the audience, it's basically a soil test. There's no way to do it because there's no evidence there of what's gonna take. Are you gonna have to dig out 15 feet and replace it all back with compacted fill? Are you gonna have to water inject, chemical injection? Like, what are we even doing? So that's a critical thing of people will call in and say, hey, about what this is gonna cost. I can't tell. I mean, it's anywhere from 500,000 and 17 million.
We can tell you what it costs. We can tell you what it costs to figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And that's what you need to hear out of somebody's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, it's going to cost you XYZ for us to design, build, and do the engineering, but like you can't even get a permit pulled on the commercial side unless you have a geotech. Because none of your all your engineering for your foundation, structural, and everything else follow that geotech.
Yep.
Your seismic loads. So that is your first starting point of anything. And if somebody's not willing to go there,
mm-hmm.
I don't even know how you get a correct number.
Yep.
Even if they built something right next door to it, dirt can change within feet.
Yep. Well, and then everything's engineered, so those engineers are going to fall back on, well, I didn't have the soil conditions. I mean, your investment is at risk,
Right.
and I see that the most in the commercial side of things is just people, it's definitely different. Like if you called and said, hey, I want a 40 by 60 shop with one roll-up door and a walk-through door in it. I can ask you 6 questions and have you a quote in 2 hours. No problem. But if you're saying, hey, I'm going to build a new Joe Blow's restaurant in downtown Frisco, about how much it's going to cost. There's millions of dollars in variables there, from permitting to different plans, to sewer taps, to grease traps, to all these things that don't fit. But I think it's good to be educated when you're asking those questions from a commercial project standpoint, to know that a little bit of a very, low cost item, which is a geotech report, can be anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000, possibly. It's a step up and a step ahead to when you're calling somebody and saying, hey, I want a price. Well, do you have a geotech report? You can then say yes, and that's going to help know that you're pretty serious about this project and it's worth the time looking into it. Because on a commercial side of things, it sometimes takes months to price out this stuff, and especially when you consider the permitting aspect, it can take months on top of months to be able to get one ready for construction.
Yeah, and on the farm and ranch side, that's another thing people don't understand. That geotech, it has to be per building that's on site, especially with arenas, with the clear spans and all that. That's why we're really after a lot of that. But this what is the hard thing, I think, with a lot of stuff that we build out in rural America, is a lot of them are secondary homes, secondary properties that are not their full-blown house they live in every day. So, and most of them come from the inner city. So when you look at the inner city, you're driving on a paved road. It's got curves. It's got water systems that shed the water off the roads. It's got water taps, sewer taps at the curb. Site is pretty much graded to where pretty close where it's going to be, because that's what all the infrastructures were created off of. Is the paths have already been prepped. So the house you're sitting on, the infrastructure is very minimal when you're talking to an inner city builder, except in the residential side or farm ranch side.
Because the developer's already done
all the work,
most of the infrastructure work.
And typically you won't have a custom builder come in there and build on that lot. Typically that's going to be a spec builder or person that developer owns the lots.
Yep.
But my point is like when we go out to County Road 1036 in Iredale, Texas, and there's just nothing but a barbed wire fence. That's where our work starts.
Yep.
And when I say that is, you may have already purchased this 30 acres before we even had this conversation. The sad thing is, you didn't know what the roads were going to cost to get to where your perfect dream build house was going to, if you want it back here off the river, off wherever, you want a riverbank, or accessibility of water and power. It could be miles away, or they could be right across the road. You might need to bore under the road to get the water over there. There's so many variables that when we start with a blank canvas, and we got to paint the picture with your money, and we got to perform it. And holding a budget, that's the hardest thing to do in a rural area, because there's no infrastructure design. Nobody's went in there. All they've done is put a county road down in, and you're lucky if there's even a permit sometimes. This might be a deed from 100 years ago. And you're trying to help this client work through that process where we can make them successful with their project. And you got, Joe Blow over here that builds metal buildings saying, yeah, I can build the whole thing for this. There's more to it than that. And people really need to understand that, because when you come from inner cities, you just think, hey, everything's been here. I mean, why can't they just figure it out? I mean, here's my curb, here's where the sewer starts. Even if you know what a sewer tap is or what a water meter is, and you walk it from your house to there, well, it should be as simple as that at my property in Iredale.
Yep.
It's not. It could be miles off the road.
Right. Or miles underground for water.
Right.
Hey, this is a beautiful place, but water's going to cost $400,000 to get to if we have to dig a well. And the closest utility is 6 miles away. And that's, I 100% think that's the deal. And I understand it from a customer's perspective too. You bought this land, you're so excited. This guy shows up in a shiny new pickup, and he's just being your best friend. Well, there's certain questions that you need to think about. Why he's not asking you, like, where are you going to build the house? Well, if it's way at elevation, it's a pretty important question to ask. Hey, where's the water? Where's this? Where's that? Where's the closest power? And if you don't know as a customer, those are items that are just what they are. I can't go get a quote from Encore electric provider, and you go get a quote from Encore on the same property and expect them to be any different. You know what I mean? So that's where I get with, like, those are the things that they're just locked in. Like, that is what it is. Now, moving the house 300 yards this way might save you on utility, dirt work, drainage, underground infrastructure, whatever it may be. And that's what, as soon as and I'm learning this from you, but as soon as I get out of the truck, before I even look somebody in the eye and shake their hand, is looking around. Number one, I'm looking for a pipeline easement or some kind of flags on the fence. Like, what's here, Before we even talk about it, I want to make sure that we're not dealing with something we don't know about, so that we can kind of gear that conversation to. I understand you want to do it here, but we're right on top of a pipeline. You know what I mean? Because I've heard horror stories of that happening, and it's just, it takes the training and the real world experiences to even think about things like that. And I know I brought stuff to you like, hey, especially early on, I didn't think about this, man. I'm sorry. I didn't look at this red line saying that we're 1 foot off the property line too far, and now it's going to cost us money to move all these forms. And I remember you said, rip them up, move them. What are you asking me for? Right. You know what you got to do.
Right.
Well,
and too, a lot, like, you run into this with a lot of cash deals that people are paying cash for the property, inherited money or have money, whatever, or grandpa left on the property and it just has a deed, and they're building a project on it. Well, if you don't have a survey that's at least 5 years old or as new as 5 years old, you need to get one, because there's so many things that can happen. Wind rights, water rights, there's all kinds of things there's rights to now. And if you don't have that on that legal description and your easements to that, because there's a lot of blanket easements too, I have nothing to write, because they're not going to be written in a deed from 100 years ago.
No.
But you can carry that, and that works for you. And I don't even go through a title company sometimes.
Yep.
Because if you're financing the improvement on the property, the title company doesn't care. If you're buying a property for somebody else, you pay cash for the property, and you're going to do cash on the actual improvement. They don't care to see all the surveys and stuff. They just care that they have a legal way to document, and you put a title policy on that legal description or that deed.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of ways we ran into that before where there's not a survey, and the next thing you know, where you want to build, you have a freaking pipeline
Mm-hmm.
or a high pressure line, whatever, running through the property, or just
or
a strictly
proposed,
utility easement, like,
or a proposed future line.
right.
That's basically the landowner before you has already made an agreement and gotten paid for an potential easement, and there's nothing there, but you're going to build it where they've already made an agreement with the previous owner that's where it's going to go or something like that, so anything can happen.
Yeah, and if you have a pole on your property with a power line feeding it, it's got an easement.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way it gets there. You're going to sign a piece of paper, whether it's on a survey or not, there's an easement to it, because they have to have a way to service the line.
Yep.
So I think that's a lot of stuff that people don't understand when they're looking at things, and it's very hard to explain, because another popular thing is we hear on the phone or before I get there, oh, it's flat. It's perfectly flat. Like, it's not this thing doesn't move at all. And you walk out there and you're laying this thing out, and you're the whole time you're sitting there thinking, oh, this is not even remotely flat. And you walk 80 feet from the first pin flag you put down, and you look back and you're staring at the pin flag at eye level.
Mm-hmm.
You have to explain to the client, look, come here, look at the pin flag, stand right here, look at it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about 5 foot tall right here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not flat.
Yep.
And it's hard to break their heart, because you've already given them a budget of, oh, it's pretty flat, so we're going to put a foot or so of select fill in there, and we're going to rock on. When you go out there and you got to add 4 foot to it, those numbers escalate a lot because of logistics of hauling dirt, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Finding dirt, that's a big thing in certain areas.
Can we use the dirt that's there to at least bench it or not? Like, it all goes into it for sure.
Just because you see a dirt pit doesn't mean that we can get dirt out of it. Right. Some of these guys that find these sand veins and can haul sand or aggregate out of it, they strong arm it. Mm-hmm. The only way you can get the dirt is they haul it. Yep. And then you're a part of that. Well, that dirt shouldn't cost that much. Yep. But they own the property, they have the trucks, and we don't even let our trucks go in there and haul for nothing. Yep. So you get all these little things nobody knows about. Mm-hmm. And we can tell by an address or a zip code real quick that, oh, I know dirt is going to be this much, rock's going to be this much over there. Because we already built there. Mm-hmm. We have that history. And we keep up with it very well. Yep. So, on all aspects of the company.
Well, and that's the biggest, you brought up a good point. We have the database of all the information we need before, like, for instance, for an example, you call a well company, they're more than likely going to be able to tell you you're not going to have any trouble getting water, or you are going to have trouble getting water based off of your location, because they have that mapped out. It's kind of the same with us. Whenever you say, all right, well, I want to build in Van Alstyne, Texas. Okay, perfect. There's a lot of parts of Van Alstyne, Texas that are just extremely rocky. And we know that sitting on site. You can look at the ditch driving up that it's solid rock, and then when we get there and we got to do any kind of cutting and flipping, we know that we're going to need equipment that can do this. We're not going to go with a skid steer with a flat blade on it, and one guy in a transit and expect to be able to do that job when we know after the first 2 inches of topsoil we're going to hit solid rock. We already know that. So that would be a situation where somebody tells you, oh yeah, I can get the dirt work done for whatever it may be. No, you can't. But you're not going to tell your customer that until you dig it out and say, hey, there's rock right here. I got to rent this machine because I don't have it. We have the machines to be able to do it. And that's just where you can get in a bind, real quick off the jump. If you're already having that type of situation with your builder in the very first phase of the game, what do you think is going to happen when it comes time to put your cabinet pulls on, or you have a sheetrock issue, or your windows are, doesn't look like they're leaking, they're caulk correctly, or whatever that may be. If you're starting out with a problem, more than likely you're going to end up with a bigger problem at the end. So.
Yeah, and we've seen that across all sectors of the business. And when the failures happen, it's not our project. We had a big ice storm that came across Texas, northeast or north, North Texas more than anything. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of arena open structures, clear span structures that failed. And I hate it because I don't want to see anything in a bad way with somebody. But it goes back to, well, that arena, this guy's $100,000 difference. Well, there's not enough meat on the bone for there to be $100,000 difference. Yep. There's either a lot on the piers or a lot on the structure. The thing is, it's up to that contractor to do what's right for you. Yep. And the police on that's your insurance company. It's a sad thing. Yep. When it's not in a municipality or a city. When you're out in a county like that, you have free reign to do what you want. and you're supposed to build them right, but you can tell that metal salesman guy, even though it's pre-engineered, hey, lighten up the collateral load, lighten up this, or you can push it all on the concrete guy and say, hey, we're going to put all of the load in the piers. And so when that thing gets under load, the piers are going to fail because the concrete guy doesn't know what he's looking at. Because you didn't do a geotech, you didn't do a foundation design or pier design. So there's so many ways you got to captivate that. But when you see catastrophic things happen like that to people, that most of them are in the farm ranch industry or barely making it or just now made it and are actually making money and have something like that happen, the insurance company's going to cover whatever you got insured for.
Yep.
And if it's from 20 years ago numbers, you're going to be upside down real quick.
Yep.
So it's things that you just got to be ahead of it.
Yeah. You can't replace it for what they're going to pay you, and then you're already operating a business, and you have nowhere to go. You know, you don't even have enough money to get it back built. But the only way, like you said, the only way to get that building price cheaper or anything like that is going to be in inadequate labor. That you're just finding the cheapest guy to work for the cheapest dollar amount an hour, or you're gonna. It's the weight of the building. You know, how much does our building weigh versus what you went with? How much does their building weigh? Because if it weighs a significant amount less, then that just means that there's less strength in that building. You know, and then concrete is obvious as well. So it's like you said, it's trusting people who've done this, and our heart goes out to all those people that lost property and you know, by no means are we saying anything negative about contractors. Sometimes acts of God happen, you know, and bad things happen. But there's a lot of situations that we've been interjected into and know about that, you know, if they would have done it right on the front end, they wouldn't have had that problem. You know, it's unfortunate, and not by no means sitting here bashing other contractors, but it's just, you know, we want the world to know, like, this is why, you know, we're not. If we're higher on price, it's not because we're lining our pockets and going and doing all this fun stuff. It's because we know there's something that someone is missing, or there's something that we know that has to happen for this thing to go. Yeah. I'm not saying if we're $8,000 higher on a 3,000 square foot house.
Who knows?
I mean, obviously, we have the overhead, we have the people, we have the supervision, and all that kind of things that a lot of people might not. But if we're $80,000 more, with all the data and research and you know, background information and everything that we have, I don't see it, you know.
Well, I think one of the key things that we need to touch on real quick while you're talking about numbers and being off with a gap like that, what people need to understand, farm, ranch, commercial projects, residential projects have to appraise.
No.
Not everybody goes and pays out of their pocket. They have to go to a bank, so they have to have comps. So we can't just name our number. You know what I mean? We have to, you know, there's things when we get into rural projects, we really have to explain to the banks because there's maybe a mile and a half of road, which follows utilities. Mm-hmm. And your high number is not in your build, it's in the actual infrastructure. Yeah. You know, and that's the same thing for commercial and residential, same way. But it's like, we cannot, just because you see Rafter P, nice shiny black trucks and, you know, people always dress sharp and, you know, that's an image, and that's how, my opinion, that's how when you go on site, if we're going to build nice things, my people need to look sharp, my equipment needs to look clean, all those things need to follow suit. It's not because I want to look pretty and charge you a bunch of money to look fancy. Yeah. I'm doing that because I have a reputation of I want to be clean, persistent, and always efficient. Mm-hmm. So the only way to do that is to follow all those things, and we don't do that by charging everybody more money. We charge what's fair market price. That's the only way we can get one through the bank. Yep. So, and
for people that don't know, you know, when you're saying it has a comp out, what that means is there have to be comparative sales in that area to be able to support the
sales.
Sales.
Yep.
Not quotes, but sales. So there has to be comparable sales in the property that they basically associate, a bank would associate what this project is going to appraise for. So therefore, if we go out there and just throw a little crazy wild number on it, but nowhere within 50 miles is even close to that with similar square footage and acreage, you know, we're wasting our time, our money, and our customers' time and money. Yep. So there are some times where it's a little bit harder to get comps just because we do build some abstract stuff, and they, you know, there's not a lot that have sold in the last 5 years that is comparable to a, you know, say a 3,800 square foot house with a 10,000 square foot car barn attached to it. Mm-hmm. Probably not going to find that just laying around on Zillow for very long, you know, or very many of them. But you know, the normal aspect of, you know, like a residence is primary residence, for example. I mean, we can't, like, again, we just can't just throw a number at it and say, hey, here you go, take it or leave it, because it's never going to appraise. We just wasted our time and years.
Well, we run into a lot of like the farm ranch and the residential side of it. We work in a lot of areas that, like Southeast Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
When we've been working up there a lot, and when we move in these new areas or more rural areas, West Texas, that haven't had a lot of development or new things built in a long time. So if nothing new, nothing sold. Mm-hmm. So when you go to look at these comps, the comps are hard to measure because there's nothing been sold that's even closely resembles it.
Right.
So you run into that, but we also we're hounding you when you're going to a bank. Hey, before you sign or put any money down, here's your budget. Mm-hmm. Here's your property. Go talk to your banker. Make sure, number one, they understand the project, where it's located, and make sure it'll praise, that they feel comfortable about where it'll praise. Because the last thing, we've lost jobs on this, and it's okay. Because the jobs would have never got off the ground. And the last thing I want to do is take somebody's money and go out there and can't get the job done because the bank won't approve it. Mm-hmm. And that's basically where we run into those comp problems these days.
Yep.
So
well, and two, like a lot of people buy this property and have weekend type property and it's an investment, right? So the way that I've compared it to certain, to other people is, you'd say, why would I go up to Oklahoma and buy 50 acres and build a $1 million house on it whenever there's houses right down the road for half that or whatever? Well, why would you go to Odessa way back in the day and spend $500,000 to put an oil rig up with the chance that it's not going to strike oil? Obviously, this migrating from the metroplex, population density and things like that, studies that we've gotten a part of. So yeah, it's an investment. Is what I'm saying. So as things move and more people move to different areas, I mean, you're ahead of the curve at that point, because that acreage that you bought for $2,200 an acre that would be $10,000 in Texas is one day most likely going to be worth $20,000 and $30,000 an acre. It's just the way of the world. So whenever you're taking that into account, and especially the Oklahoma regions where it's really desolate and there's hardly anything there, there could eventually be something there, and it's just something to consider. But to get our quality of things, we can't just drop our prices and we're going to use that's another good point. We're going to use the subcontractor base and the employees, the same ones that would build our personal houses if we did it. We're not just going to go to an area and then go to the hardware store and say, hey, do you know a good electrician? Hey, do you know a plumber? AC guy? A painter? Like, we're bringing our people. Sometimes that comes with a price tag as well. But I would let them paint my house. I would let them do the tile work in my bathroom. And I'm not going to send somebody that I don't know to your property, not knowing the quality of their work, or if they pay their vendors, or if they pay their suppliers, if they, I mean, most of the subcontractors that we have that we use every day, I'd send my kids with them for a month and never worry about it. Right. That's just the kind of people that we associate ourselves with, and the standard that we keep, people to. And they, everybody that works for us knows I'm going to give it my best, because they're not going to accept it if I don't.
Right. Yeah. And we've been down a hard road when it didn't work out. Going to the paint store and picking up a paint contractor, sheetrocker, and dealing with the consequences of that during a project, and what it cost was a lot cheaper than staying with what we know. Yep. So we have this great process. We have the design build on the front end, the pre-con, and now we go into the hard bid process. And that's a very hard pill for me to swallow, because there's been certain times during the last 10 years or so when COVID hit, all these things like hard bid projects, there's no movement in them unless you go through design and then you decide to ultimately change something. That's on you. Like, we already did all the stuff on the front end, the pre-con and the budgeting and all that stuff. But when COVID hit, we lost a bunch of money. And in a time that, we had plenty of work, but it hurt.
Yep. Well, lumber, 10x, in price. So, but that's one of my proudest moments. And people all the time ask me why I work for Rafter P, why I don't go do something for myself, why I don't blah, blah, blah. Well, that was a perfect example, because I remember sitting in your office and we're both about to pull our hair out and, like, what are we going to do? This lumber package was supposed to be $18,000 and it's $40,000. What are we going to do? And that's what you looked at me and said, we're going to do it for $18,000 because that's what we told this person we would do. And one of my proudest moments at Rafter P was that, and not going up. And I think that's the right thing to do. And it sucked for a while, but made it through it. And I think that our customers, because at that time too, even some of the customers, like, I understand if you've got to go up and
they're going to us saying
like, but we're gonna have to stop the project if we don't. I can't afford to spend an extra $20,000 on lumber. Like, we understand, but we're able to kind of finagle stuff and make some deals and buy some stuff in bulk to where we could get it to where we could at least swallow that pill and keep our doors open. I'm proud to say that we were able to do that for our customer base.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody else just stopped.
Stop. There were houses sitting everywhere that had 8-foot Johnson grass around a dirt pad. Like, people just stopped because the banks couldn't give them no more money and the people couldn't afford it. So, but another thing, I mean, when you talk about that situation, though, it wasn't. We had that conversation, but it wasn't me that made that happen. It was y'all. It's because y'all made a hey, we'll make this work, and we got your back. We're gonna work harder and efficiently to make this work. We're ultimately everybody wins, and that's what y'all did. I mean, we lost money, but it was not near as bad as it could have been. We got it done.
Yep.
But and that speaks. And I bring that not to pat you on the back or everybody that works here on the back, but it's talking about the depth of the company. Mm-hmm. There's not people working here very long unless they're here for the long haul.
Yep.
So and a sad thing is when people have been here for the short haul and they figure out what the long haul is a couple years later, they hate it. Mm-hmm. Because they do see us as a family and they miss it. As hard times it might have been in their short amount of stay here, it in the end they wish they would just listen, stuck it out and figured it out, because it's worth it. Especially when you deal with the clients and you see the happy faces and the families. And we're working for grandkids now. It's 24 years in the business, and I'm working for grandkids now of people we built houses for or projects for, and it's cool seeing that generational wealth of people come through and say, hey, you built my grandpa's place. I want you to build maybe a 30 by 40 or whatever, but who cares? It's something that you're starting off with. Yep. With that pride of using a Rafter P products, stuck with that family out long.
Yep. And then, when we talked about coming together and doing this, that's one of the things that I thought about too, was a lot of the customers I deal with are word of mouth or previous people that we work for, so I don't have to explain this process to them. You know what I mean? Like, they already know. Miss Relford, she already knows. She already knows Brad's going to take care of her. But the people that are on the fence, that have no idea, they see Colt and Brad and on our bios, on our deal, I got 3 kids and you've done this and, that and both. They don't know us. They don't know what kind of hands they're in, and when they're about to spend the most money they've ever spent in their life, so that, I think that, try to use this audience as a tool of, we're laying it out, and we're open books, tell you when it's good, tell you when it's bad, tell you when it's ugly. But at the end of the day, what you're dealing with. The kind of character and culture that Rafter P is, and the type of man that I'm trying to teach my son to be is what I see as Rafter P person. When you put that brand on, and you put that shirt on. We don't employ shitheads, excuse my language, but the guys that's going to go out to the bar and, get in fights and all this stuff, like, we don't employ those guys. We don't employ the guys that are, late making payments on everything, everybody around town money. It's not our crew, Mm-hmm. Nothing against them, but it's just that's not the family culture that we're trying to implement. And we got, everybody that comes in new is either going to fit in with that family value, or they're not going to make it very long. And more power to them, best of luck, but it's just not going to work.
They get weeded out real quick.
Yeah,
for sure. And I think one thing is very top notch about what we do is after we get through the pre-con, we get to the hard bids, we have this project, it's through the bank, it's ready to go. And we're putting it with some of the best supervision that you'll ever see. Mm-hmm. And that's another, as we've grown, it used to be me and Jimmy running jobs, now it's 8 to 10 superintendents, and now some of them have worked for the first generation of people, and now they're like, we have a lot of stuff going on, so we won't carry you there. Mm-hmm. Well, Brandon and everybody else is just as talented as Kerry to some degree. Everybody loves Kerry, but or Monty. Like, it's like, we want that guy. Well, okay. Yeah, there's only they can't build them all. You know what I mean? It's like, so you have to trust that the next person that's around them is just as good. Yeah. And I love that feeling, because that makes me feel like we're doing something right. Mm-hmm. When that's the person you spend more time with than anybody else in the company. Yep. Is your superintendent. I have a lot of old school superintendents, so we fight technology a lot. They don't like the build or trim process, but they've learned to like it. Mm-hmm. Or they've learned somebody to help them use it. But the old school mentality of being there when you need something. They'll show up at your doorstep at midnight if there's a problem. Even on projects that are not there no more and they've been over with for 2 years.
Yep.
Anybody is when there's somebody in a bind, we're gonna go.
Yep.
They're gonna be there, and most of the time, it's the first call of the superintendent because that's who they have the closest relationship with. And I just gives the rest of the company accolades that when you get down in the depth of it, it still keeps going.
Yep.
Not to say we don't have problems. We all have problems. It's how we handle them, how we deal with them.
Yeah. Well, for instance, me and Carrie tomorrow are going to Weatherford to look at some warranty work on a job that we finished about 4 years ago, and it's not. We looked at pictures, said, hey, that could have been a mistake in the building process. It might be a maintenance. I don't know, but we're going. And it's because I gave that man my word whenever he signed the contract that we would do that, and that's what we're going to do. We might get there and it might be all maintenance. It might be all our fault. I don't know, but it's going to get taken care of. I'm not saying by any means that everybody needs to just start abusing their warranty stuff, but I mean, we have a 1 year workmanship warranty is what you sign a contract on. Which
is actually shit, because most of the time, I've worked on stuff that's 20 years old.
Yeah,
that wasn't my fault. It was just something. The satellite guy came out there and popped the holes in the wrong roof sheet. And it was like, I'm not going to charge them to go there and put some screws in and fix it the right way with the right fastener, but we're here to do it, and get over it. And then that happened over and over again. So I mean, the warranties are what they are.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I think all in all, that you touched on the supervision aspect of it. I mean, can't give our superintendents enough credit. Even the guys in the office, the guys who schedule and order material and all this kind of stuff. I mean, you have your last name. If you're a Rafter P customer, you have your last name in the mouths of every one of the people in the office pretty much daily, if not every other day at least, when your project's going on. I mean, you got in the background, hey, we ordered windows on time. Well, we need to look at this. We need to look at that. Boom, boom, boom. As far as on-site supervision, we got a superintendent's going to be there 4 or 5 times a week for sure, checking on projects, making sure that every one of our subs have what they need, have the right set of plans. If the customer wants to do a walkthrough, they don't have to call and schedule an appointment for next Thursday. They can show up at their job, and more than likely our superintendent's going to be there, and they can walk through right then. Another deal is the cleanliness of the job site. We've had our share of people that didn't take enough attention to that, but I mean, literally the other day, me and you went at one, said this isn't clean enough, and the next day got pictures from our, told the person, it looks clean, but it's not clean enough. And the next day we get pictures of it, you could get 8 off the floor, and it's just that level of care that you're not going to get anywhere else. And that's why you'll never see me in a different shirt or a different brand. Like I'm here for life, like, as I believe in the values of what you're about, what this company's about, what we've built and grown together when it comes to, especially working in the Western industry. Everybody that's going to be viewing this is a lot of people in the Western industry. Like when you look a man in the eye and shake his hand, that means more than any piece of paper to me. And that's why I love it as much as I do and enjoy. I'm one of the few people in the world I feel like that enjoys waking up and going to work every day. So.
But we want you to know what that feels like to be able to look somebody in the eye and know when we say something. A lot of people don't.
Yep.
We work for a lot of people that don't know what a handshake and a look in the eye means.
Yep.
But we'll show you.
Yep.
And because I'm probably one of the most accessible owners in the world when it comes to a construction company, because you catch me 300 days out of the year at a horse show or a rodeo or trade shows of some sort. Like, you can walk up and ask me or consult me about whatever you want to talk about. And that being accessible, I'll tell you something. I'm not hiding from nobody.
Yep.
I wouldn't be working those shows if I was the typical owner that didn't want to take care of my problems or wouldn't want to face a customer that's mad because things are taking too long. I mean, I've been confronted by clients that are like, hey, you're supposed to be here a month ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever. Like, let me figure that out real quick. You know what I mean? Like, not knowing exactly what they're talking about. I want to get my facts straight before I answer their question, but that question gets resolved before they walk off. Mm-hmm. And that's accessibility like that. I ought to tell people a lot. It's not just about the glitz and glamour. Look at Rafter P's here, look at Brad here. Look, it's about being accessible to a client. Mm-hmm. And I don't pay people to work my trade shows. I have people that help me with the trade shows, but I'm involved with it too. So not just all by myself. Got a big team that helps. Yeah. So so you're thinking through the process. supervision cannot happen without the drafting team.
Mm-hmm.
And poor Jan's tried to retire for the last, I don't know how many years, and she just keeps getting paid the same, and days keep falling off because we can't let her go. Mm-hmm. You got one of the most talented people in the business. And what's crazy is two of the senior of the group, Casey and Jan, both were hired from out of state, mm-hmm. and came here. Well, Casey especially came from just coming with an interview from living in Utah and moved down here for his kids, and took the job, been here ever since. And I don't know how long that's been either. But it's like you look around and we got two youngins too that are just as talented. And it's like our drafting team is so well organized and processes of what they follow and the details that go in the drawings. I think it aggravates a new sub more than anything when they're looking at them, because there is no way really to make any more money except for give us a hard bid, because it's all in the plans. Yep. And they sign off, they received them. Mm-hmm. And then when they sign a contract, they get another set. This goes that backs up their subcontractor agreement. So we're holding these subs accountable. It's not like, here's your set of plans. Look, everybody bid it. And then when we go to contract, it's not like the subs get to look at it again and adjust their number. They have to work off the set of plans they bid. If anything changes, highlighted. Mm-hmm. Red line. Yeah. So there's a lot of efficiencies just in that itself that make the supervision so successful.
Yeah. And that's, a lot of people will come to us and say, well, I'm about to go see my architect and all that. And I'm saying, okay, here's my opinion, whether good, bad, and different. We as a builder are drawing this project and know that we have to actually build it. Nothing wrong with architects, not dogging them, but I know that I have to, number one, get this in budget and also be able to build it. Yeah, it looks pretty. That picture you sent me looks beautiful, but you can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. So now you've paid an architect or whoever that may be a load of money to give you something that you're still going to have to be modified to be able to actually work in the real world, because there's a lot of freelance architects and people out there that try to make them, work power to them, hustle, make some money. But if you haven't done this, if all you have to do is collect a check for drawing something for somebody, you're not thinking about how this big open wall that's spanning 42 foot is going to take a beam that costs, 10 grand, or how are we going to vault the ceiling this way when the watershed's coming across this and we're on a standing seam metal roof or whatever it may be. What is this? There's a billion different examples of what could go wrong if you're not paying attention to it from a builder's aspect, and that's double check, triple check, quadruple checks from designer to drafter. Jan, she's, if it has to, fortunately, even put this into a CAD program, it has to have X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3.
Even me too, go toe with me and tell me I ain't,
Yeah.
We've been around for a long time, but I know in the end I'm gonna have to do what she's asking.
Yep. She'll send you a list. She sent me a list the other day and said, I answered every question beside what color is it. I said, I'll let you know later. She said, I ain't starting it unless you tell me what color it is, because then I got 2 sets of plans. Then I'm gonna have to go back and modify it. Yes, ma'am. I have to call the customer. Hey, what color do you want this? I don't know yet. I'm like, look, sir, you're gonna have to give me a color. We're gonna change this later. We're just not gonna tell Jan, but you're gonna have to give me a color today, or you're not getting nothing drawn. But that's just goes to how many levels of double and triple checking these plans we do before they get out into our superintendent's hands who's going to build them. And it's a relief, and we always catch something. If you don't catch something, you're doing something wrong. Everybody's human, so there's nothing wrong with catching a problem before it exists, but it's it makes for a much more flawless build time and build experience for the customer.
And what where an engineer and an architect smooth out between my detail orientation and Kurt's details. We have people ask us for recommendations, or when there's plan bust, how to resolve it. From curb in to Panera Bread to finished floor to the top of the curb. Why is it blah, blah, blah. We deal with that. Kurt deals with that. But I deal with the same part on the steel side. You've dealt with steel, architects have a hard time understanding the wall pockets and sizes of beams and how does the stud on the outside make it work with the build up of the EFIS on the out. There's so many little things. They just don't understand certain things. And we deal and get paid from architects to help them with that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So why would you hire an architect when we have the resources and work with them hand in hand? Right. And if we need something from an architect, we have relationships with them that we can get without having to wait a year and a half for a set of drawings, or get a set of drawings that will be a plan bust or a budget bust. Yep. So we're giving you the shortcut.
Yep. And I've heard Kurt many times tell somebody, you want me to bid this set of plans you sent me, or do you want me to bid what's going to work?
Right.
And it's just radio silence on the other end of the line. I'm like, Kurt, he's right. I mean, you want, because he's in his aspect is, I'm not going to give away all my. I know that this isn't going to work per the city of Fort Worth's section code A, blah, 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 you know. So yeah, I'll bid it like this, but here's where your problems are going to be. And then it comes down to it, and everybody else bids it the same way, and he'll give an ad alternate of this is the way it should be. Boom, 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 boom. Our prices are right in line, but being that the plans aren't correct, it's going to be this much more, you know. And it's gotten him, you know, a lot. I've witnessed it. It's lost him some work. But it's also gotten him work, and whenever you get to work, it's going to be done correctly. Right. You know, so Panera Bread does not deal with mistakes very well. You know, like he there's no time for it. But he's done some really, really cool stuff. So,
and I think it just shows the depth of the company again with the leadership. Like, there's so many. Kurt's hard-headed, probably one of the best project manager. Is the best project manager I've ever met in my life. You know, hard-headed to the T, because it's not, when we all started working together, when he came to the company, it was a very power struggle, because he had been with his previous partner was bullheaded as he was, but not in a good way. Mm-hmm. He's bullheaded to make more money. Kurt was bullheaded to do it right. Mm-hmm. And that's what aligned us to be partners, is that when we finally figured out how to communicate with each other, we both wanted the same thing. I just don't want to run everybody out the door being so hard up front, because I knew what he was about. Yep. And I know what he's about. And it's not by any means trying to be ugly or anything, but he's just, when you're a good project manager or a good general contractor, mm-hmm. you have to be hard-nosed, because you want to deliver a good product. Mm-hmm. Very, very, in his line of business, very few people like that anymore. Yep. They don't care. I mean, when he was at his other firm, I was in the concrete dirt work steel for Paneras and Chipotles and stuff like that. And he'd never seen a steel erector, a concrete guy, as anal as I was. And I never seen a GC that pays their bills on time. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? So we were a match made in heaven, but you know, in the end, when there was a problem, like there's a Panera Bread in Denton that we rebuilt the whole dang frame in 3 days. We worked 24/7, rebuilt that frame and kept it on. That's when he knew me and him were aligned. Yep. Is that it wasn't my fault. It's just the concrete guy, the surveyor got it wrong, and we set our anchor bolts wrong. We rebuilt that whole frame and modified it in the field and had it re-engineered and kept the project on task. Mm-hmm. He knew that, hey, this guy, and everything's on point, you know, and it's hard to do that in a commercial world anymore, but we still do it.
Yep. Well, I mean, he's just the type of guy. You get in between him, it's like a mama cow and a baby. If you get in between the finish line and Kurt, you're gonna get pushed out of the way. Mm-hmm. The finish line. It's no, and I love him for it, you know. But he is one of a kind. I mean, he's one of the best I've ever seen in my life, you know. And I go with him to a lot of advice. You know, about certain
we both do. You know, we think we were specialists in our field until we go talk to him. We realize how much we don't know.
Yeah, sometimes you got to listen how dumb you are for the first 5 minutes, and then he'll tell you the answer. Yeah. But honestly, I deserve it sometimes. But yeah, it's funny. But
it is explaining the depth. Like we have, when I don't know, there's another person that would. Yep. You know, and that's why we don't back up from nothing, because there's somebody in the company that's going to know. Absolutely. Or a sub base of some sort that specializes in stuff. Yeah. But you know, the biggest thing I think we really want to spitball this whole conversation about is we really are your contractor. You know, if you really want value to your project, you want your investment to last long term, you want your budget to fit, you want your kids to feel safe when there's a storm. All these things, like I have my ex-wife and my family living in one of my structures. I have my mother living in one of my structures. They're all built the same. Mm-hmm. I didn't do nothing more or no different than I did in this office we're sitting in Decatur, Texas. Yep. That took a hell of a wind load from a tornado. Mm-hmm. So then they're a direct hit. There's pine trees that are 2.5 foot wide out there. They've been here forever. They're snapped. Yep. You know, at the trunks. That tells you how big a tornado that was.
100%.
So
well, and you know, my deal is if people made it this far in the video, like they're our customer. Yeah. You know, there's. You know, it's a lot of explaining and a lot of redundancy for people that already know us. But if you made it this far, you're our kind of people, because you care enough to know that this isn't smoke and mirrors. This is how much we really do care about this. And we haven't even gotten into the technical aspect of all this stuff that we talked about. So that's a whole other, 3-hour conversation. But, that's what I would say. If you've already made it this far, I mean, you know that you're in good hands, and, I hope that people can at least be educated enough to know, you're in, if you build with us, or if you decide to build with us, if it's possible, then you're going to be in the Rafter P family, and it doesn't stop today. It doesn't start and stop when your project's done. It's forever. So,
right.
And that's I take the most pride in is the relationships that I've built with coworkers, sub base, customers, friends, family. I mean, they're all family in my opinion. So,
How old are you?
34, I think.
How long have you been here?
April will be 9 years. I thought it was 10, but I think somebody's just shafting me out of a full belt buckle or something. But I thought it was 10. But Sarah told me it was 9. So
yeah. Well, that speaks volumes, and there's a whole young team around you.
I'm the oldest one of the
I know. That was me, and then there's a gap, and then there's you.
Yeah.
So, but just to say, there's a whole Rafter P. We're fixing to celebrate our 25th year next year. Mm-hmm. And what's even crazier is there's a whole next generation that's being built daily, and they're all your age or younger.
Yep.
And they all, for people out there that are cringing right now, like, oh, that's a lot of young people. This day and time, I don't want that many young people working for me because they don't have the capability. My team has the capability of more than probably what most 55, 60-year-old grown men in the industry are. And it's not because of necessarily their age or anything. It's their experience. They're hands-on. They're just big sponges. They all have backbones, and they have big butts. They're going to back it up. Mm-hmm. So it's like...
Well, and every one of them has done it.
Right.
Like, you think about the Jakes, the Felixes, the Carries, every one of us has done it. Mm-hmm. So we've been there. We've been the one with the welding rod in our hand. We've been the ones with the cutting torch. We've been the ones laying the lumber. We've been the ones that are...
Pulling mud, concrete.
Dragging concrete mud. We've all done it. So it's not like we're... And that's why I think that we make a good leadership team, is that we're not asking you to do anything that we haven't already done ourselves, So, but yeah, we're a great team, getting better every day. So,
and I think one thing what you touched on before we get wrapped up is, which is very important for people to understand, which gets the depth back to the depth of the company. There's a lot of guys and ladies that have worked for themselves, mm-hmm. that had their own company, came here because they were tired of working for themselves. They always wanted to work. And so we have a lot of specialized people that work here in special trades that have different roles in the company, but those are our backbone of our company that we literally can lean on if there's a problem, or when you have a situation, or we want to do something that nobody is really running the most, is where we've never done this before. Can you help us? And that's where that stack of team can put it together.
Yep.
And it speaks a lot for a company to me is when you have people that are making the same amount of money as they were working for themselves, but we're all a big united team, and you can't beat it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Stay tuned for another Grip Branded podcast, and come hang out with us on our 25th year.